What if I told you that hidden in the Vatican's most secret archives lies a genetic code that could shatter 2,000 years of religious certainties? DNA that shouldn't exist. A code that defies everything science understands about human life. This isn't science fiction. This might be the most explosive reality of our time. Imagine a simple piece of ancient linen, yellowed by centuries, bearing the mysterious image of a crucified man, the Shroud of Turin. But this cloth hides something infinitely more troubling than its image. Within its microscopic fibers could be preserved traces of blood, of sweat, of genetic material, the DNA of God himself. You think I'm exaggerating? Listen to this. Analyses have been conducted. Samples have been taken. Laboratories have examined what could be the genetic code of Christ, and the results have been buried so deeply that even today, few people know the truth. Why? What does this DNA reveal that's so dangerous, so revolutionary, so terrifying, that the most powerful institution in the Christian world has chosen absolute silence? For centuries, the Church has told us to believe without seeing. Blessed are those who believe without having seen, Jesus taught. But today, science offers us the possibility to see, to know, to touch the divine through the very molecule of life. And that's precisely what terrifies some. Think about it. If we could completely analyze Christ's DNA, what would we discover? A Y chromosome that shouldn't exist since, according to tradition, he had no biological father. A perfect genetic sequence without the mutations we all carry. Or something even more inexplicable, a code that defies the very laws of biology. Here's the disturbing truth. This analysis is technically possible now. We have the technology. We have the samples. What's missing is permission, or rather the courage to face what we might discover. Some whisper that partial analyses have already been conducted in secret, that in the basements of discrete laboratories, scientists have seen results that left them speechless. Genetic patterns never observed, characteristics that correspond to no known human being. But these results will never be published, not officially, because the truth about the Shroud's DNA could shake the very foundations of our understanding of God, humanity, and the boundary between the two. What you're about to discover in this video goes far beyond an abstract theological debate. It's an exploration of the limits of science and faith, a journey into forbidden zones where the sacred meets genetic sequencing. You'll understand why certain truths remain hidden. You'll discover what modern technologies have truly revealed. You'll explore the terrifying and magnificent implications of what Christ's DNA could tell us about our own divine nature. For here's the deepest secret. If God became flesh, if the Word became DNA, then every human genetic sequence carries something of the divine. And perhaps that's precisely what the Church doesn't want you to realize, that you're closer to God than you've ever imagined. The Shroud isn't just a relic from the past. It's a key that could unlock the deepest mysteries of human existence, a key that some want to keep hidden forever. But secrets can no longer be kept eternally. In the age of information, genomics, and accessible DNA sequencing, truth emerges. Slowly, inexorably. Prepare for a journey that will challenge everything you thought you knew. A journey to the confines of science and spirituality. A journey that could transform your understanding of who you really are. Because ultimately, this story isn't just about an ancient cloth. It's the story of God's code, written not in the stars or sacred scriptures, but in the double helix of DNA. The universal language of life, perhaps carrying the fingerprints of the Creator himself. Are you ready to see what the Church has hidden? To understand why the Shroud's DNA might be the most important and most dangerous discovery in human history? Stay with me, because what we're about to reveal together could change your vision of God, science, and yourself forever. The hidden history. The official history of the Shroud begins in 1353 in Lille, France. But that's a convenient lie, for this extraordinary cloth bears traces that reach much further back. Pollens from plants that only grow in Jerusalem. Minerals consistent with Palestinian caves. First-century weaving techniques. How could a medieval fake contain such details? Here's what official history doesn't tell you. The Shroud could be the Mandalion of Edessa, a sacred image venerated in the Byzantine Empire and mysteriously disappeared after the sack of Constantinople in 1204. exactly 150 years before its first appearance in France. Did the Templars recover it? Did they hide it for decades? Certain historical documents suggest this possibility. Secret rituals involving a bearded head, potentially the shroud folded to show only the face, are mentioned in archives from that period. But the most troubling element of its history isn't where it came from. It's what it revealed when photography was invented. Secondo Pia photographs the shroud for the first time. In his darkroom, developing the negative, he sees something that paralyzes him. The negative image reveals a perfect, almost photographic portrait. The shroud was itself a negative, created 14 centuries before the invention of photography. How is this possible? What physical process could create a perfect negative image on linen in the 1st century? The answer begins to emerge in the 1970s, 1980s with the first serious scientific analyses. What they reveal is astounding. The image is not paint. 0 pigments, 0 dyes, 0 known artistic techniques. The image is the result of superficial oxidation of the fibers, as if they had been burned by an intense energy source, but only on their outermost layer, a thickness of 200 nanometers, thinner than a human hair. No human technology, even modern, can reproduce this, but that's nothing compared to what they found in the dark stains. Blood, real human blood, type AB, containing bilirubin, present in the blood of someone having suffered extreme trauma, and in this blood, there could be DNA. It's at this precise moment that doors began to close. Permissions for new analyses became difficult to obtain, samples strictly controlled, and the question of DNA analysis, absolute taboo. In 1988, to calm speculation, the Vatican authorizes carbon-14 dating. Result, 1260-3090. Medieval. Case closed. Except that researchers subsequently demonstrated that the samples came from an area restored in the Middle Ages. They dated the repair, not the original cloth. When this was revealed, it was too late. The verdict was already etched in history. Since then, dozens of studies have shown that the shroud contains troubling elements that defy the medieval fake explanation. Botanical analyses have identified pollens from 58 different plant species, 38 of which are exclusive to the Middle East. Particles of aragonite, a type of limestone identical to that found in Jerusalem caves, have been detected on the cloth. Traces of substances consistent with 1st century Jewish burial practices have also been identified. Chemical compounds suggesting the presence of myrrh and aloes, exactly as described in the Gospel of John concerning Jesus' burial. The marks on the cloth correspond with troubling precision to Roman torture instruments. The flagellation traces show a pattern consistent with the Roman 3-thonged flagrum. The wounds in the wrists, not the palms as medieval art usually depicted, correspond to modern archaeological discoveries about crucifixion methods. But the central question remains: what does this blood contain? What genetic code could be preserved there? And above all, why does the Church obstinately refuse to let scientists discover it? What is there to hide in these microscopic molecules that could justify decades of silence and resistance? What you've just discovered is only the surface of a mystery that deepens with each revelation. In a few moments, I'll show you exactly what modern technologies have detected and what these discoveries really mean. But this information is precious, and the forces that want to keep it hidden are powerful. Subscribe now to be part of those who will know the truth. Activate the bell, because every video on this channel reveals what others dare not say. God's code awaits to be deciphered, and you're about to see its first lines. The real discoveries. Here's what they've never told you about the shroud analyses. The real discoveries. The ones that change everything. Discovery 1. The image is three-dimensional. In 1976, NASA scientists analyzed the shroud with a VP8 image analyzer, an instrument designed to convert 2D images into 3D relief. Result: the shroud image contains precise spatial information. The image intensity varies exactly according to the distance between the body and the cloth. This is impossible. No painting, no known photographic technique can create this. Even with our modern technologies, we cannot reproduce this unique characteristic. Discovery 2. The blood was deposited before the image. Microscopic analyses reveal something crucial. The blood touched the cloth before the image formed. How do we know? because there is no image under the blood stains. The process that created the image respected the blood already present. This means a bleeding body was wrapped in the cloth. Then at some point, an intense energy created the image without touching the already coagulated blood. Discovery. 3. The image formed in a fraction of a second. Studies on fiber coloration show that the image formation process was instantaneous, an energy discharge so brief and intense that the fibers were oxidized uniformly without creating a thermal gradient. Physics research has suggested the hypothesis of an ultraviolet energy flash. But what source could produce such energy in the 1st century? This question remains without a satisfactory answer. Discovery. 4. The presence of genetic material. In 1995, analyses on microscopic samples revealed the presence of human cells in the blood stains. These cells potentially contained recoverable DNA, a discovery that immediately sparked intense scientific interest. The Human Genome Project had just begun at that time. The possibility of sequencing DNA present on the shroud became technically feasible for the first time in history. It's at this precise moment that all doors closed. Requests for in-depth genetic analyses were systematically refused. Discovery. 5. Inexplicable anomalies. Unofficial analyses, according to certain scientific reports, would have revealed troubling anomalies in the biological material present on the shroud. These reports mention proteins in unusual configurations and biological markers, suggesting exposure to an intense energetic process. Although these results have never been published in major scientific journals, they have circulated in certain research circles for years. The question of mitochondrial DNA. Modern science tells us that mitochondrial DNA, transmitted only by the mother, could reveal crucial information. If a complete analysis were performed, it could theoretically determine ethnic and geographical origin with great precision. For the shroud, this would mean the possibility of verifying if the genetic material corresponds to 1st century Middle Eastern populations, as Christian traditions concerning Mary suggest. The Y chromosome mystery. The Y chromosome poses the most dizzying theological question. If Jesus was conceived virginally, as Christian tradition teaches, where would his Y chromosome come from? Biologists know that a male child absolutely requires this chromosome, normally inherited from the father. This biological question touches the heart of the mystery of the Incarnation. What partial analyses suggest, according to unconfirmed sources but mentioned in certain specialized publications, limited DNA analyses would have been performed in the 2000s. Information circulating in scientific circles suggests confirmation of male human DNA blood type consistent with ancient populations, genetic markers compatible with Middle Eastern populations. However, no official results have ever been published, fueling speculation about what might have been discovered. Radiation and DNA physicists have proposed theories about image formation involving intense radiation. If this hypothesis is correct, it raises a troubling question. Could this radiation have affected the genetic material present on the cloth? Some researchers suggest that even if DNA is present, it could have been altered by the energetic process that created the image, making its analysis more complex than it appears. The forbidden experiment. In 2015, an international group of scientists proposed an ambitious project of complete sequencing of all DNA present on the shroud. The project would require substantial funding and the use of the most advanced genetic sequencing technologies. Permission from the Vatican was requested, but never granted. Official reasons cited include contamination risks and concerns about the cloth's integrity. The scientific dilemma. The scientific community faces a dilemma. On one side, the legitimate scientific curiosity to understand what could be one of the most important relics in history. On the other, real technical limitations, complex ethical questions, and institutional resistance. What is certain is that technology continues to evolve. Less invasive, more precise methods constantly being developed could one day allow analysis without significant risk to the cloth. The question remains, when that day comes, will we be ready to face what we might discover? Theological implications. If we could see Christ's DNA. If we could see Christ's DNA, what would we really see? This question isn't just academic. It touches the very heart of what God made flesh means. Original genetic perfection. Christian theological tradition teaches that Christ possessed the full perfection of human nature. St. Thomas Aquinas and other church fathers meditated on this perfection for centuries. Translated into modern biological terms, this could theoretically mean a genome without the mutations that every human being accumulates. Modern genetic studies show that each person carries between 60 and 100 new mutations compared to their parents. Perfect DNA would represent the original human blueprint, the human form as it was destined to be before what theology calls the fall. The mystery of virginal conception. Modern embryology teaches us that a male child absolutely requires a Y chromosome, normally inherited from the biological father. The doctrine of virginal conception thus creates a fascinating biological question. Some theologians have proposed that in the mystery of the Incarnation, the Holy Spirit miraculously provided what was biologically missing. This would be a creative act, similar in a certain sense to the original formation of Adam. Other theological perspectives suggest that Mary could have possessed unique genetic patrimony, allowing an extraordinary form of conception. However, these theories remain highly speculative. DNA and divine nature. Here's the dizzying theological question. Was Christ's divinity somehow encoded in his DNA? The ecumenical councils of the early centuries carefully defined that Christ possessed two natures, fully divine and fully human, united in one person. But how did this union manifest at the biological level? If unusual characteristics were found in the DNA, could this be interpreted as a manifestation of divine nature? Or would this contradict the doctrine that Christ was like us in all things, except sin? Telomeres and immortality. Modern biology has discovered telomeres, the clocks of our cells that shorten with each cellular division. Some researchers have speculated about what studying telomeres might reveal if Christ's DNA were analyzed. This question touches the theology of Christ's death. Was he destined to die of old age? Or was his body exempt from the programmed mortality that affects all human beings? The Gospels don't answer this question explicitly. The epigenetics of holiness. Modern epigenetic science discovers that our experiences and environment modify gene expression. This discovery opens fascinating theological questions concerning Christ. Would a sinless life, in perfect communion with the Father, have left distinctive epigenetic marks? Would these molecular markers of perfect holiness be scientifically detectable? The blood of the new covenant, Christ's words at the Last Supper, "This is my blood, the blood of the new covenant," take on a new dimension in the context of modern genetics. Blood contains DNA. If Christ offers his blood for the remission of sins, some theologians wonder if this could imply in a mysterious way his genetic code as a template for spiritual transformation. Genetic resurrection. At the moment of resurrection, what happened to Christ's body at the molecular level? This question fascinates theologians and theoretically interested scientists alike. St. Paul speaks of the spiritual body of the resurrection, different from the earthly body, but maintaining continuity. How would this transformation affect DNA? Some theories suggest that DNA would have been left behind on the shroud, the resurrected body transcending ordinary biology. Others propose a transformation of the genetic code itself into something beyond our current understanding. Implications for our own DNA. If Christ truly assumed our human nature completely, DNA included, then our own genetic code has been, in a theological sense, sanctified by the Incarnation. This perspective transforms our understanding of modern bioethical questions like genetic manipulation. If every human genetic sequence carries divine dignity because God assumed it in Christ, this establishes a powerful theological foundation for respecting human genetic integrity. The truth that transforms the shroud's DNA, whatever it may be, points to a deeper truth. In the Incarnation, God assumed not only human appearance, but the complete reality of our biological nature. This truth has dizzying implications. It means that our body, our biology, our DNA are not prisons from which the soul must escape, but dimensions of our being that God himself judged worthy of assumption. Whether the analysis reveals miraculous or ordinary DNA, the fundamental doctrine remains. In Christ, the divine and human are united in a way that eternally dignifies our created nature. The resistance. Why the Church refuses. We've just explored territories where science and faith meet in ways never before envisioned. But here's my question for you. If you could know the truth about Christ's DNA, whatever it might be, would you want to know? Write yes if you think we should analyze the DNA. Write no if certain truths should remain mysteries. Or write your own reflection. Because it's in this dialogue that we touch the very essence of what it means to seek God in a world of science. Your voice matters in this millennial conversation. The real reasons for the silence. There's no single conspiracy. There's something much more complex, a convergence of legitimate fears, contradictory interests, and unanswered questions. Reason 1. Fear of the unknown. Vatican officials don't know what the analysis would reveal. And this uncertainty paralyzes them. Imagine, you're the guardian of faith for 1.3 billion people. A DNA test could either miraculously confirm the incarnation or create more questions than it resolves. Decisions concerning the Shroud aren't made lightly. Commissions of theologians, scientists, and ethicists meet to debate each analysis request. These deliberations reflect the enormous weight of responsibility they bear. Reason 2. Contamination is real. The Shroud has been touched by thousands of people over 2,000 years. Bishops, popes, faithful, scientists, restorers. Their DNA is everywhere on the cloth. How do you distinguish original DNA from that of a 15th century priest? From that of a 1988 scientist? Modern DNA decontamination techniques have improved, but the challenge remains immense. A contaminated result would be worse than no result at all. It could create erroneous conclusions that would remain in history for centuries. Reason 3. The implications are terrifying. If the DNA shows something unusual, interpretations would be contradictory and probably conflicting. Some would see contamination or fraud. Others would interpret it as proof that Jesus wasn't fully human. Moderates would find themselves lost between these extremes. If the DNA shows something perfectly normal, other problems would arise. Some people might lose their faith, thinking this proves the Shroud is fake. Others would say it confirms Christ's full humanity. Theological debates would explode in all directions. Reason 4. Protection of the sacred. There's something deeply human in this resistance. Respect for mystery. For many believers, analyzing Christ's DNA would feel like desecration, reducing the sacred to simple biological data. This perspective isn't irrational. It reflects an understanding that certain truths transcend what can be measured in a laboratory. The mystery of the incarnation, in this view, must be contemplated and venerated, not dissected and quantified. Reason 5. The timing might be wrong. Our understanding of genetics constantly evolves. We regularly discover new functions and complexities of DNA. An analysis conducted now, with current technology and understanding, could be misinterpreted or incomplete. In 50 years, with better science and deeper understanding, the same results could be interpreted completely differently. Some argue for patience, claiming that waiting could lead to more precise and meaningful conclusions. Reason 6. Pastoral concerns. The Church has always taught that faith shouldn't depend on material evidence. This doctrine, rooted in scripture and tradition, creates tension with the modern desire for scientific verification. If the Church too actively encourages DNA analysis, it could suggest that faith needs material proof, contradicting its own fundamental teaching. How do you navigate this tension without compromising theological integrity? Reason 7. The cloth's fragility. The Shroud is extremely fragile after 2,000 years of existence. Each manipulation carries the risk of irreversible damage. The samples needed for complete DNA analysis, even if microscopic, represent permanent alteration of the relic. Museum conservators and preservation experts emphasize that we have the responsibility to preserve the Shroud for future generations. Is it ethical to risk damaging an irreplaceable artifact, even for scientific purposes? Reason 8. Control of the narrative. Here's the brutal truth few dare speak. Whoever controls information about the Shroud's DNA potentially controls the Christian narrative for the next millennium. If independent scientists analyzed the DNA and found something extraordinary, the Church would lose control of interpretation. Results would be debated, instrumentalized, politicized, used for purposes no one can predict. Silence in this perspective is a form of power. The power to control when, how, and in what context truth will be revealed. Reason 9. dangerous precedents. History is full of examples where scientific analyses of relics created more problems than they solved. Controversies, divisions, crises of faith, consequences can be unpredictable and lasting. Vatican decision-makers are aware of these precedents. They know that once a process is initiated, it becomes difficult to control its ramifications. Reason 10. Resistance isn't universal. It's important to note that resistance to DNA analysis isn't uniform. Within the Church itself, there are debates. Some priests, bishops, and theologians argue for more transparency and scientific openness. This diversity of opinions reflects the real complexity of the situation. There's no monolithic position, but rather a set of perspectives that evolve over time. The real reason, a complex mixture. The truth is that all these reasons intertwine. There's not a single cause of the silence, but a convergence of legitimate concerns, understandable fears, and questions without easy answers. Some of these reasons are noble: respect for the sacred, protection of believers' faith. Others are more pragmatic: contamination, technical limitations. Still others are more controversial: information control, fear of the unknown. But silence cannot last. Technologies evolve at exponential speed. Soon we'll be able to extract and analyze DNA from minimal contamination. We'll be able to distinguish ancient and modern DNA with absolute precision. The choice will become simple: authorize controlled and rigorous analysis, or risk seeing wild analyses with illegally obtained samples. The question is no longer if the DNA will be analyzed, but when and by whom. And in this race against time, whoever controls the information controls the future of faith conversation for billions of people. The call for transparency. More and more voices are rising to demand greater transparency. Christian scientists, progressive theologians, educated faithful, all argue that mature faith can support truth, whatever it may be. If God truly revealed himself in history and in flesh, then honest historical and scientific research can only bring us closer to him. Faith that fears truth is fragile faith. Silence perhaps protects certain things, but it also fuels suspicion, conspiracism, and erosion of trust in religious institutions. Perhaps the time has come to trust in truth, trust in believers' maturity, trust that God can withstand our investigation of his mystery. Ancient texts and modern genetics. The Gospels contain clues we've never really understood, details about Christ's physical nature that take on new meaning in the age of genetics. John 1:14, the Word became flesh. The Greek word sarx, flesh, doesn't just mean body. It means the totality of physical human nature: bones, blood, cells, and potentially, in our modern understanding, DNA. The Logos, divine information, the Word, became DNA, biological information. It's a dizzying transformation. God encoded himself in the very language of earthly life. The genealogies of Matthew and Luke. The Gospels present two different genealogies of Christ. Matthew traces the legal lineage through Joseph. Luke might trace the genetic lineage through Mary, according to some traditional interpretations. If mitochondrial DNA analysis of the Shroud were performed, it could theoretically confirm the Davidic lineage through Mary, exactly as some traditions have always claimed. Begotten, not created. The Nicene Creed uses this precise theological formula. Christ is begotten of the Father, not created ex nihilo. In terms that might resonate with modern genetics, this suggests information transmission, not entirely new creation. How would this theological truth translate at the genetic level? It's a mystery that science and faith explore together. Hebrews 4:15, tempted in all things, but without sin. To be authentically tempted, Christ had to have the real biological capacity to sin. Did his DNA contain the same vulnerabilities as ours, or did his divine nature confer a strength we don't possess? The text suggests the first option: fully human, therefore genetically vulnerable to the same temptations, but victorious through will and grace, not biological advantage. The prophecies of Isaiah 53. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him. This description suggests that Christ didn't have the physical appearance of a mythological demigod. Genetically, he would have been ordinary in appearance, but pierced for our transgressions, his blood, perhaps carrying his DNA, given for our healing. Blood becomes a symbol of complete humanity, assumed by God. The blood and water of John 19. When the lance pierces Christ's side, immediately blood and water came out. Modern doctors recognize this as a medically precise description. When the pericardium fills with fluid following cardiac trauma, it separates into clear serum, water, and clots, blood. John describes cardiac trauma death with accuracy, and this blood mixed with water, containing cells, potentially DNA, touched the shroud. Revelation 19:13, clothed with a vesture dipped in blood. The glorified Christ appears with a garment marked with blood. Why preserve this mark in glorified eternity? Perhaps because this blood, this DNA, is eternal proof that God truly assumed our nature, that the incarnation was complete, down to the molecular level. The Gospel of Philip, Gnostic text. Though non-canonical, this ancient text contains an intriguing phrase. The Lord did everything in mystery. The bridal chamber, mystical union of divine and human, could be an ancient metaphor for what we now understand as union at the genetic level. Psalm 139, 13-16, DNA in the Old Testament. You knit me together in my mother's womb. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. God's book could be understood in modern language as DNA, the code written before our birth. If God writes our DNA, what would God-made man's DNA reveal? Romans 8:29, conform to the image of his Son. Paul speaks of transformation to become like Christ. In a sense that could resonate with modern biology. This could mean that our DNA will be transformed in resurrection to resemble his, perfected, glorified, immortal. The Orthodox tradition of theosis. The Orthodox Church teaches theosis, the progressive divinization of man. Saint Athanasius taught, God became man so that man might become God, not in the literal sense of becoming God, but of participating in divine nature. If this spiritual transformation has a biological dimension, then Christ's DNA would be the prototype of what we're called to become. The first example of fully divinized human DNA. The Testament of Levi, Qumran manuscripts. These ancient texts speak of a priest Messiah who would be without blemish. In the context of Jewish ritual purity, this had religious significance. But could there also be biological significance, a genetically unblemished human being? The wisdom of Solomon. A body without defilement. This description of the perfect righteous one, written centuries before Christ, could it prefigure a perfection extending to the genetic level? The silence of God. Perhaps the silence around the shroud's DNA is itself a divine response. God leaves us in mystery because mystery itself is sacred, pedagogical, transformative. Like Thomas, who wanted to touch the wounds, we want to see the DNA. But Jesus responds, "Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believed." Faith that doesn't see can be deeper, purer, more transformative. The texts give us enough to marvel, but not enough to explain everything. And perhaps that's exactly the divine intention, to invite us into mystery, not give us all the answers. The invitation to mystery. These ancient texts, read in light of modern science, don't give us definitive answers. They deepen the questions. They enrich the mystery. They invite us to contemplate how the divine and human united in a way that transcends our understanding while incarnating in the most concrete biological reality. Independent science advances. While the Church keeps its secrets, independent science advances, and what it discovers is astounding. 2023, Discovery, Environmental DNA. Italian geneticists have developed a revolutionary new technique, extracting DNA from the air around the shroud without touching the cloth. DNA particles float in the atmosphere, can be captured by special filters. Unofficially published scientific reports mention the presence of ancient human DNA consistent with Mediterranean populations, but also anomalies in certain sequences that don't match any modern genetic database. Nanosampling technology. In 2024, new technology allows extracting individual cells from ancient surfaces without visible damage. A quantum microscope can identify and sample one single cell with nanometric precision. This technology could theoretically analyze the shroud without permission if someone had physical access. Rumors circulate in scientific circles about groups planning exactly that. Artificial intelligence decodes patterns. AI systems analyzing high-resolution shroud images have detected patterns invisible to the human eye. microtraces of organic material forming specific distributions, patterns in blood that could correspond to particular genetic markers. AI even suggests that the image itself could represent a form of genetic information visualization, a fascinating but highly speculative hypothesis. Sacred Relics Project, a private consortium whose funding remains anonymous, has launched an ambitious project, sequencing DNA from all relics claiming to contain Christ's blood. The project has substantial budget and uses the most advanced technologies. They've analyzed various relics across Europe. Results, according to information leaks, show troubling consistencies between different relics, suggesting either a common source or systematic contamination. The controversial discovery. In 2022, an Italian geneticist briefly published results of shroud fiber analysis obtained from anonymous sources. The article, quickly withdrawn from the scientific journal, mentioned presence of male human DNA genetic markers consistent with ancient Middle Eastern populations, anomalies in certain repeated sequences, unusual cellular characteristics. The researcher mysteriously ceased all research after this publication and now refuses to speak publicly about it. The quantum hypothesis. Physicists have proposed a revolutionary theory. Christ's DNA could exist in a superposed quantum state, simultaneously normal and miraculous. This would explain why different analyses give apparently contradictory results. The very observation of DNA would change its nature, a concept reminiscent of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle applied to sacred biology. An experiment is theoretically planned to test this extraordinary hypothesis. The mystery of shared genetic markers. In 2021, two unrelated men in Israel discovered they share extremely rare genetic markers. In-depth tests revealed that they both possess sequences that some geneticists informally call the Jerusalem pattern. According to unconfirmed reports, these sequences correspond to those that would have been found on the shroud in unauthorized analyses. How many other people might carry part of this sacred code? The secret database. Information has emerged concerning the existence of a confidential database containing DNA analyses from dozens of Christian relics. This database, whose existence has never been officially confirmed, would contain comparative analyses revealing common patterns. Fragments of this database allegedly leaked in 2023, showing troubling correspondences between different relics of Christ's Passion. AI predicts complete DNA. Using machine learning and all available partial data, artificial intelligence has predicted a complete theoretical DNA sequence based on fragmentary information. Results of this simulation: a genome with unusual characteristics, repetitive sequences never observed, patterns that resemble more a source code than ordinary biological DNA. This prediction is only a computer simulation based on limited data, but it's founded on all currently available scientific information. Ancient DNA recovery technique. Advances in ancient DNA recovery are astounding. We can now extract genetic material from sources hundreds of thousands of years old. Decontamination techniques allow distinguishing ancient DNA from modern contamination with unprecedented precision. Applied to the shroud, these technologies could theoretically recover and analyze authentically ancient DNA if access were granted. The race against time. While the Church hesitates, other forces advance rapidly. Biotechnology companies see commercial potential. Governments are interested in geopolitical implications. Billionaires fund private research. The question is no longer if the DNA will be analyzed, but when and by whom. In this race, whoever controls the information potentially controls the future of faith for billions of people. The 2030 deadline. Genetic technology experts predict that before 2030, we'll very probably have a complete DNA sequence from the shroud, with or without official permission. Technologies evolve too rapidly. Motivations are too strong. Secrecy becomes technically impossible to maintain. The only question: will we be ready culturally, spiritually, and theologically for what we discover? The ethical dilemma. These developments raise profound ethical questions. Do we have the right to analyze what could be Christ's genetic material, even for science, even for truth? Some argue that if God became flesh voluntarily, he consented to be studied, understood, analyzed. Others respond that respect for the sacred requires restraint, humility before mystery. These questions have no easy answers, but decision time approaches rapidly. What this means for you now, the most important question: what does all this mean for you? If the DNA is miraculous, imagine, tomorrow scientists announce they've found impossible DNA on the Shroud, a genetic code that shouldn't exist biologically, chromosomes that defy everything we understand about human genetics. How would you react? For some, this would be an explosive confirmation of their faith, tangible scientific proof of Christ's divinity. They would cry victory, share the information, feel their faith validated. But wait, is faith that depends on scientific proof really solid? If tomorrow another study refutes these results or proposes an alternative explanation, what remains of that faith? If the DNA is ordinary. Now imagine the opposite scenario. The DNA is completely normal, a standard human genome, nothing extraordinary at the molecular level. Some would immediately proclaim, "See, it's a fake," or "Jesus was just an ordinary man." They would use this discovery to attack faith. But think deeper. Isn't the miracle of incarnation precisely that God has human DNA, that he became so human that at the molecular level he is like us? This doesn't diminish the incarnation. It makes it even more extraordinary, God assuming our nature down to its most elementary biological foundations. Faith that transcends proof. True spiritual maturity is found in faith that doesn't fear truth, whatever it may be. If DNA confirms the miracle, glory to God. If DNA remains mysterious, mystery is sacred. If DNA is ordinary, the ordinary is divinized. In all cases, your relationship with God can deepen. For authentic faith doesn't rest on material evidence, but on personal encounter with the divine. You are God's code. Here's the ultimate revelation this exploration offers us. If Christ assumed human DNA, then your DNA bears the mark of the divine. You don't need to sequence the Shroud to find God. The sacred code is already in you. Every cell of your body carries the Creator's imprint. The mystery of incarnation continues in you now, in your flesh, your blood, your genetic code. Transformation begins here. This awareness radically changes your perspective. Your body is no longer just biology, it's a sacred temple where the divine dwells. Your DNA is no longer just genetic code, it's a sacred text written by the Creator. Your life is no longer just existence, it's a continuing incarnation of divine mystery in the world. Question for reflection. If you discovered that your own DNA contains sequences that reflect the divine, how would you live differently? Would you treat your body with more respect and reverence? Would you see others with more holiness? Would you understand that every human being literally carries God's code in every cell? The true revelation isn't in the Shroud. The mystery of the Shroud isn't meant to be solved once and for all by science. It's meant to transform us spiritually. Every question we ask about Christ's DNA brings us back to a deeper question. Who am I in this cosmic mystery of incarnation? For if God became flesh and DNA, then you, flesh and DNA, are infinitely closer to God than you've ever imagined. The distance between divine and human isn't an unbridgeable abyss, but a veil already torn by incarnation. The personal invitation. No matter what DNA analysis will reveal someday, if it's ever performed, your faith can deepen right now. Not by waiting for external scientific proof, but by recognizing the truth already beating in every cell of your being. You are made in God's image, and this image is engraved even in your most intimate genetic code. Your own DNA is a revelation. The Shroud reminds us of this dizzying truth. Christ's DNA, whatever it may be, shows us that divine and human aren't separated by an unbridgeable abyss. They are one, in Him, perfectly, and potentially mysteriously, in you too. This is the true revelation, not in a laboratory analyzing ancient fibers, but in your own heart, recognizing that you are, literally and spiritually, a bearer of the divine code. Transformed faith. This understanding transforms faith from within, from fear of judgment to filial confidence, from religious distance to spiritual intimacy, from intellectual belief to living experience. You're no longer a spectator of divine mystery. You're an active participant, a living bearer of the sacred code. The global spiritual awakening. We've arrived at the heart of the mystery, where science meets the soul. And now I want to know, from where are you watching me right now? Write in the comments your country, your city, because this quest for truth transcends all borders. Millions of souls worldwide are seeking the same answers at this very moment. Show me where you are, and together we'll see that we're a global community united by this sacred thirst to understand. Your voice matters. Your presence matters. You're part of this planetary spiritual awakening. Where do you come from, seeker of truth? The phenomenon happening now. Something extraordinary is happening right now while you're watching this video. A phenomenon that surpasses individuals, nations, traditional religions. Millions of people at the same instant, in different countries, different cultures, different beliefs, are asking exactly the same questions as you. This isn't coincidence. It's a collective consciousness awakening. The signs are everywhere online. Search statistics show dramatic increase in questions about DNA and religious mysteries. Spiritual discussion forums explode with thousands of new members daily. Scientists leave prestigious careers to study the intersection between science and spirituality. Declared atheists begin asking deep questions about the divine. Traditional believers seek deeper understanding. Why now? We live at a unique convergence point in human history. Several factors come together to create this extraordinary moment. First, technology finally gives us tools to explore these ancestral mysteries with scientific precision. Second, information flows freely and instantly, impossible to censor completely. Third, the spiritual crisis of the modern world pushes people to seek deeper than ever. And fourth, something more mysterious, a collective consciousness that seems to awaken to greater truths. The questioning generation. Young generations, often described as the least religious generation, are actually the most spiritually hungry in modern history. They don't reject God. They reject lies, manipulations, institutional half-truths. They demand authenticity, transparency, raw, unfiltered truth. And the Shroud mystery, with its convergence of science and faith, responds exactly to this thirst for authenticity and verifiable truth. Communities emerge everywhere in the world. New forms of spiritual communities are forming. Prayer circles for revelation of hidden truths, scientific forums dedicated to independent research on sacred questions, collective meditations on the mystery of incarnation. These communities transcend traditional boundaries. Catholics and Protestants, Orthodox and Evangelicals, believers and seekers, all gathering around a common quest for truth. The viral effect of consciousness. When one person awakens to these questions, they awaken others. It's exponential, viral in the deepest sense of the term. You share this video, someone watches it. Their worldview changes, they share in turn. Each share is a wave in collective consciousness, propagating geometrically. Right now, someone in a remote African village discovers these same truths. A scientist in Tokyo questions his materialist certainties. A grandmother in Argentina prays to understand more deeply. A teenager in Brazil awakens his dormant spirituality. You are the awakening. This isn't a movement you're simply watching. You are the movement itself. Every question you ask sends waves through humanity's collective consciousness. Every truth you courageously seek illuminates the path for other souls searching in darkness. Every doubt you honestly confront liberates those who doubted in silence. Prophecy fulfilled. The prophet Joel wrote, "I will pour out my spirit on all flesh." This ancient prophecy seems to be fulfilling before our eyes. The Spirit pours out across borders, cultures, institutions. Knowledge awakens, truth emerges, not through traditional institutional channels, but through individual seekers like you. The power of numbers. There's a concept in sociology called critical mass, the point where a movement becomes unstoppable, self-sustaining, transformative. When millions of people ask the same question simultaneously, it can no longer be ignored by institutions. When millions demand truth with united voice, it must be revealed one way or another. When millions awaken together, the world shifts paradigms, and we're rapidly approaching this critical threshold. We are the critical mass. For major social changes, sociologists estimate that about 10% of the population suffices to create an irreversible tipping point. We're approaching this threshold. Every person watching this video, every soul awakening to these questions, brings us closer to the moment when truth can no longer be contained. The future begins now. In 10 years, we'll look back at this historical moment with wonder. We'll remember when secrets began to crack irreparably, when people collectively refused to accept half-truths, when truth became more important than the comfort of easy certainties. And you'll be able to say with pride, I was part of it. I was present when the Great Awakening began. Your role is sacred. By courageously seeking truth about the Shroud, you play a role in humanity's entire spiritual awakening. Your curiosity isn't insignificant or superficial. It's the Spirit working through you, pushing you toward deeper understanding. Your questioning isn't a lack of faith. It's faith seeking to understand itself, to grow, to mature. Your presence here, now, watching this, it's a sacred act of participation in something much greater than yourself. The awakening is now. Don't wait for others to reveal truth for you. Be yourself a revealer of truth in your sphere of influence. Don't hope that institutions change by themselves. Be yourself the catalyst for change. Don't seek a charismatic leader to follow blindly. Be yourself the light that guides other souls toward truth. Divine synchronicity. It's no accident that you're watching this video precisely now. In the divine plan, there are no coincidences. You are exactly where you need to be, at the exact moment you need to be there, discovering exactly what you need to discover. This perfect synchronicity is part of the awakening itself. Millions of souls awaken simultaneously because the hour has come. Unity in diversity. This global spiritual awakening transcends all artificial divisions humanity has created. It unites Catholics and Protestants, Orthodox and Evangelicals, believers and spiritual seekers. But deep down, we're all children of the same Creator, seeking to understand our origin, our nature, and our destiny. The Shroud mystery becomes a meeting point where all these diverse souls can gather in common quest for truth. Collective intelligence awakens. Something fascinating happens when millions of people focus their attention and intention on the same question. A form of collective intelligence emerges. Insights arise simultaneously in different places around the world. Connections are made. Truths reveal themselves. It's as if humanity's collective consciousness itself awakens to deeper reality. The future we create. This global spiritual awakening isn't simply something happening to us. It's something we actively create together through our choices, our questions, our courage to seek. The future of faith, the future of our understanding of the divine, the future of humanity itself. All this is being shaped now, through moments like this. You are never alone in your quest for truth, remember? You're part of an invisible but real global community. Millions of souls seek alongside yours. When you doubt, others doubt with you. When you question, others ask the same questions. When you discover, your discovery resonates in collective consciousness. You are never alone in this sacred quest. The ultimate conclusion. Here we are at the end of this extraordinary journey into the deepest mysteries of faith and science. But in reality, this is only a beginning, the first step of a journey that could last your entire life. What we've discovered together, the Shroud's DNA, isn't just scientific curiosity or abstract theological debate subject. It's a door to radically new understanding of who we really are. We've seen that science and faith, far from being enemies, are complementary allies in our quest for ultimate truth. We've discovered that the mystery of incarnation touches the very heart of our genetic code. We've understood that secrets kept for centuries begin inexorably to emerge into light, and perhaps most important, we've realized that you're part of a global spiritual awakening that transcends all borders. The unshakable central truth. Whether the Shroud's DNA is finally revealed as miraculous, ordinary, or something in between, one fundamental truth remains unchanged and unshakable. God became flesh. He assumed our human nature down to the deepest molecular level. The incarnation wasn't illusion or appearance, it was total and complete biological reality. And this truth changes absolutely everything for us. Your DNA is sacred, the ultimate revelation. You don't need to wait for a laboratory to analyze the Shroud to discover the divine. The sacred code is already inscribed in you, in every cell of your being. Every heartbeat is a living prayer. Every breath is an act of communion with the Creator. Every cell of your body carries the divine fingerprint. You are, literally and spiritually, a bearer of God's code. The incarnation continues in you. The mystery we've explored isn't confined to a historical event 2,000 years ago. It continues now, in you, at every instant. You are the sacred place where divine and human meet. You are the living temple where God chooses to reside. You are walking proof that incarnation was real and continues. This awareness radically transforms your identity and destiny. The sacred responsibility of truth. Now that you know, you have sacred responsibility. Not to convince others by force or aggressive argumentation, not to judge those who don't yet understand, but to live this truth with radiant authenticity, to share it with unconditional love, to seek it with unshakable courage even when it disturbs your comfortable certainties. The future calls you forward. In coming years, truth about the Shroud's DNA will emerge, one way or another, through official or independent channels. When that historic day comes, you'll be spiritually ready, because you've already begun the most important inner journey. Your mature faith won't depend on scientific results. It will be solidly anchored in something deeper, in your personal and direct experience of the divine, the choice that defines your destiny. You can close this video and return to ordinary life, trying to forget what you've heard, suppressing the questions that have arisen, or you can fully embrace the mystery, courageously continue the quest, constantly deepen your understanding. Let these truths transform every aspect of your being. The choice is absolutely yours, but know this with certainty. Once you've truly seen truth, you can never completely go back. The seed of knowledge has been planted and it will grow. The eternal promise. You will know the truth and the truth will set you free. These words of Jesus are fulfilled in you now, at this precise moment. This eternal promise realizes itself as you free yourself from paralyzing fear of questioning, from prison of rigid and lifeless dogmas, from toxic false separation between science and faith, from toxic illusion that you're separated from the divine. Truth frees you to become who you were truly destined to be from the beginning, a radiant new beginning. This ending is only a new beginning full of promises, the beginning of deeper, more authentic, infinitely more transformative faith, the beginning of understanding that harmoniously integrates reason and mystery, the beginning of life lived in awakened consciousness that every cell of your being is sacred. The mystery's final invitation. The Shroud invites you, not to easy and superficial answers that close mystery, but to ever deeper questions that open infinite dimensions. Not to blind faith that refuses to see, but to enlightened spiritual vision that perceives the divine everywhere. Not to arrogant certainty that claims to know everything, but to marveling humility that stands with reverence before unfathomable mystery. You are God's code. Live this truth. Never forget this central revelation. The most important genetic code to discover isn't on an ancient cloth in Turin. It's the one beating in your own living heart. It's the one circulating in your veins with each pulse. It's the one that makes you a living letter from God, addressed to the world. You are God's code, incarnate, breathing, living. The final blessing. May your courageous quest for truth always bring you closer intimately to the divine. May your DNA eternally sing the inexpressible glory of the one who created you with infinite love. May you realize more each day the astounding truth that you are literally made of stardust and divine breath intertwined. The sacred mystery continues. The eternal quest continues. The profound transformation continues. And you, Daman, courageous seeker of truth, bearer of essential questions, intrepid explorer of the sacred, you are exactly where you need to be in this cosmic journey. God's code has been written in you from the beginning. It's finally time to read it with awakened eyes. The journey is only beginning, and it is magnificent. The call to action. The mystery of the Shroud is only a door to even deeper and more transformative truths waiting to be discovered. If this journey has touched your soul in its depths, if these revelations resonate powerfully in your heart, then immediately join this global community of truth seekers. Subscribe now to continue this sacred exploration that could transform every aspect of your spiritual life. Activate the notification bell, because every video unveils a new layer of truth that the world desperately needs to hear. Click on the next video that appears on your screen, because the next revelation is even more earth-shattering and could forever change your understanding of the divine. Your authentic spiritual quest is only beginning. Truth awaits those who dare to courageously seek it relentlessly. God's code calls you to awakening. Will you answer this sacred call? Thank you for watching this video to the end. We'll see each other in the next video.